April 26th, this Friday, actually, Unsung Hero hits theaters. And after many telling this family they needed to write a book, this guy said, why don't we make it a movie? One half of the group for King and Country, Luke Smallbone, is on with us right now. Is that how the story goes, Luke?
Yeah, essentially, man. Yeah. So, originally born in Australia. Hopefully, you can still tell. You Americans have jacked up my accent. Thanks. But born in Australia, and our dad was a concert promoter in Australia. And on one particular tour that he brought back, the tour didn't go very well. We ended up losing everything that we had as a family. We lost the house, we lost the car, the life savings, and so dad was looking for a fresh start for his career, and he got a job offer in Nashville, Tennessee. He thought it would be a good idea to move his 6 kids and his wife, who was 6 months pregnant at the time, across the world. And that's exactly what we did. Soon after we arrived in Nashville, dad lost that job. And so we're stranded on the other side of the world, no friends, no family. We were sleeping on beds made out of clothes. Weren't always quite sure where the next meal was going to come from. Didn't have a car at the time. Didn't have any way for our little sister to be born in a hospital. And I've told somewhat of that story on stage for the last 12 years. And like you said, I've had a lot of people come up and say, hey, man, you guys should write a book. And the truth is, Joel and I were homeschooled, so we don't read or write very well. And so so we thought, man, maybe we could make a movie instead. And part of the reason why I wanted to make the movie is because I'd seen the impacts at the shows, and
Sure.
two, I believe in the power of family. I think family is more important today than it ever has been in the history of the world, but yet we don't value it as such. And so my Mother Teresa has this wonderful quote where she says, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And that's kind of the purpose and the blueprint for the film.
How old were you when you guys moved over?
Yeah. I was about to be 5 when we moved.
Really?
And so it's been an interesting thing because we've had a lot of people come and ask and be like, hey, man, you guys, I mean, you're working on this film. How can you guys be objective? Because it's basically about you guys. And I'm like, man, there's not too many people making movies about 5 and 7-year-olds. You know what I'm saying? This movie is not about us. This movie is about our parents. It's about our older sister. For the most part, they're the ones who drive the story. I mean, see, we have characters in the film, but it's not really a hugely consequential role. And I think and part of it is, I'd flip that on a lot of people and say, hey, but who knows your story better than the people who walked through it? And who knows the story better than, when you tell this story hundreds and hundreds of times, the beats that work and the beats that don't work, the stories that, make people laugh and the ones that don't, and so it's been a real thrill for us. I think that we need movies that are talking about family on the silver screen. We need to have movies that, people can take their whole family to see, but we also need movies that people walk away asking themselves, hey, can I be maybe I should be a better dad. What if I'm a better mom? What if I was to become a better brother, a sister, aunt, and uncle? I think that's the feedback we get from this film, which has been a wonderful thing.
With those stories that you've told over time, you kind of did a pre-edit for the movie.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You're right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oftentimes you see movies that are quote unquote based on a true story, and then many, many aspects of the story are changed for the movie's sake. You guys being so involved, how important was it for you to keep the whole story honest?
So one of the things that was interesting actually early on was, we worked on another film in 2016, and it was based on true events, is what we had said. Which basically in the film world means nothing. It's like when somebody says this is made from natural substances. Yeah, what does that mean? You know what I'm saying? Right. But for us, what was interesting when we got into it and we saw the first cut, we actually changed just some of our terminology to "this is," and focused on the "is" a true story, because that's obviously some of the speeches and some of the things that take place in the film. Yes, there's a script writer working on those things, but man, all of the things that happened basically happened that way. The story tells, makes you feel like it's over the course of a year and a half, 2 years. And obviously we've taken some lifetime events and shrunk them down into what feels like a year and a half, but they're all things that kind of happened. And, one of the funniest stories is the scriptwriter went and spent some time with my dad once. And he's talking about the story, and he's like, oh, David, I'm so sorry that this all happened to you. And then in the same sentence says, but this is going to make an amazing movie.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about how important family is.
Yeah.
Every family, this is an Easter egg for those of you that are going to watch it this
Yeah.
Friday. Every family member has a cameo in the
Yeah.
movie in one way or the other. How fun was it to include everyone in the movie?
Yeah, I
In
mean, it
one,
was fun. I think because the movie is a true story and it's real. And the other thing is part of the blueprint for this was I went to a producer friend of mine who had kept saying to me, Luke, I'd love to work with you. I'd love to work with you. How can we work together at some point? And so I pitched him this story, and for the most part, he immediately said, hey, let's put it into development. And you probably know this, but when you put these films into development, the amount that get made are very, 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 very few.
right,
And
right.
when we were in the process of it, I had said to him, I said, man, part of my motivation is, hey, I think this story, whether or not it's now or in 10 years, I think this story is worthy of being a feature film. But I also want to do it because my parents are alive. You know, they're here right now. I think there's a lot of times where we make these films and you say, hey, this was for my grandfather, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's amazing. Or this is from my dad who passed away 10 years ago. And part of my urgency was, hey, mom and dad are still here, and I think that gives them, when you talk about a real story, it's one thing for it to feel real, like in a World War II sense, like which in today's day and age, it's like, well, that's many generations ago now, but it's still real, but we can't really relate to it, if that makes sense fully. But when you say this is a true story and your parents are still living, that takes on a totally different meaning, because then I think that they can do some of these interviews. They can have some influence and, kind of reveal a little bit what God showed them in their life and what God taught them as they walk through some of these things. I think it gives it much more potency.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And they have a big occasion coming up Friday, right? A wedding anniversary, 40 something.
Can you believe that? It's absolutely astounding. So we went to, obviously in films, you've got a big group of people to try and pull these things off. And Lionsgate is the studio, the distributor behind it. And they were like, hey, man, we've got this date in mind and we think it's great. It's a couple of weeks before, Mother's Day. This, plays pretty strongly to mothers and some of these other things. And how do you guys feel about April 26th? And we're like, yeah, it sounds logical to us, that type of thing. And it was later on, we actually went to mom. It was like, hey, mom, they picked the date, it looks like it's going to be April 26th. And she said, oh, that's our, our 49th wedding anniversary, right? And look, I don't think we've ever told a holy or white lie. But it was like, absolutely. Yeah, we knew that. We thought this through, Mom. We were like, we're just going to make this so important. So that's their 49th wedding anniversary. Can you believe it? All the days that they would pick, and the other thing is films are only released on Fridays. So the likelihood, the chance of this is, I think someone did the math. It's like it's like a 2,000 something to 1 chance that this could happen.
Incredible. That is so cool. And what a cool gift for them too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. You do go and you hear people like, hey man, so how you feeling about putting your family's story up on the silver screen? And at first I was very innocent, just like, yeah, man, I just think this is the next right thing for us to do. And, I feel like we're meant to do it. There's been so many miracles along the way. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, family's up on a silver screen. This does come with a lot of interesting things that are attached. But it's been cool, I think, for mom and dad. A great celebration. I mean, I have no idea what my dad's going to do for their 50th. This is going to be a hard thing to top. You know what I'm saying?
Got you a movie for 49. What are you going to do?
That's right. What could he possibly do for the 50th?
1994 was my first senior in high school, first year in radio. And I worked at a Christian radio station, a small little station, about 6,000 watts. And I told some of people close to you to this. I had the biggest crush on Rebecca St. James.
Okay.
And watching this movie, though, it brought back some really cool memories that I'd forgotten about, like Creation. What was that, 97? I think that's in the movie, or 94, whatever it is in the movie. Man, I totally forgot about that. And then some of the artists that you bring into this. Let's talk about the soundtrack, because I mean, I'll say that your version of Crazy is absolutely fantastic. I remember noticing a couple of other songs that were in the screening of the movie. I didn't write them down, but how did you guys narrow down the songs that you wanted to remake for this movie?
Yeah, in some cases, you know, it's when you're an artist and you get into to make music. You know, I've never done remakes before. I've never done covers, and in some cases, that was a little bit of a artistic exercise. You know, and at first, you think it's gonna be easy because usually we're writing songs from scratch. You're like, this has already got great lyrics. It's got good melodies. This is gonna be so easy. Man, I'm not convinced that it's hard. It might be harder to redo songs. Because you've got to keep the song, because I've always said this, because now we have done a Christmas album, so we've done some remakes and covers in that regard, but that's a little bit different, I think. And I've always had this rule with covers that you have to give people the real melodies, obviously the real lyrics, and you need it to feel like the real song. But if it's too much like the old song, they'll just go listen to that song. And so you got to bring it into today. Well, how do you do that? And so that was a little bit challenging. And when it comes to picking the songs, man, just selfishly, I'm just like the ones I like, like at the end of the day, people are always like, hey, how do you decipher what's a good song and a bad song? I'm like, the good songs are the ones you like, and the ones that you don't are bad. You know what I mean? And so for us, it was going through the 90s, and when we came over, Seal was huge, and so that song Crazy was one of them, because I just thought it was insane. And then I thought it applied to our story. That chorus says we're never going to survive unless we get a little crazy. And that's basically what our family did. And, mowing lawns and, cleaning people's houses. Our joke was we did all the things that Americans hated to do when we came to America. And so that was crazy. And then to Place in This World, Michael Libby said, still might be one of the great songs ever written. It's just a fantastic song. C.S. Lewis has this great quote where he says, the only books that are worth reading are the books that have been around for 50 years that are still in print. Because if it's been around for 50 years, it really says something. I don't, music, I venture to say, if you've got a song that's still, moving, it still impacts people, and it's been 15, 20 years, you've probably got yourself one of the greats. And Place in This World is that way. And then there's just other fun songs, that we had in the movie. You've got like Jesus Jones, which is a pretty cool song, a Lenny Kravitz song in the movie. Then in the covers, we've got Rod Stewart. We've got a big, huge hit, international hit in "You're the Voice" by John Farnham that never made it to America, but It was a global hit. Aside from America, obviously something's wrong with America. Anyway, it was just songs that we grew up loving, and so in some cases, songs that you sit there and you go, and then like any album, you've got songs that move you, that like really are deeply emotional. You got other songs that are just fun, that are just a special song. So that's kind of how we picked, in some cases.
You I think for remakes, you either need to make them your own, or you need to do what Weezer did and do an exact replica of the song, just you doing it. I mean, that album was like, you hear the song, like, hang on, is that Toto or is that who is that?
That's right. That's right. You're not wrong. Good pickup.
Your brother plays your dad in this movie.
Yeah.
Has the acting bug really bitten him? Because I know he also was in Journey to Bethlehem as well, which I'll be honest, I didn't recognize. My wife goes, that's the dude from King and Country. Yeah. And I said, no. I know who that is. It's somebody else. And she pulled up IMDb and goes, look.
Yeah, she'll prove you wrong.
She did. She's like,
there was evidence in marriage. It was the evidence in marriage where it's like, oh, husbands really are wrong that much.
They are. And it has to go through that process, though. Oh, no. I'm right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, no, this could not be. No, yeah. Then it's good for you.
He did a fantastic job, obviously, in both parts. From your perspective and working with him on this, how interesting was it to play your own father in this for him?
Yeah, I think that, I've always joked with Joel behind his back, and then if he was here, I'd say it. Like, my dad and Joel are the same person. Like they're exactly the same. Now, what's funny is people go, no, but I see some very distinct differences. Yeah. And then this is what they would be. By the age of 40, my dad had 6 kids, and Joel doesn't have any kids. There's something that does to someone that, your personalities might be, very similar, but as far as the rapid speed of maturity that is required, I've always said this, and I'm not saying this at my brother Joel, but I've always said, if you want to be wise, have children, because it's not necessarily that they're like teaching you things like, Dad, you should not get angry. It's not necessarily that. It's that when they reflect you. And so you actually get to see yourself for who you really are. Ironically enough, I think this is Joel's process of playing our dad was once again a reflection, but not necessarily of my dad with Joel, but Joel to my dad, realizing like dad, Joel's walking through, pretending, that's what acting is, pretending to walk through what my dad walked through all those years ago. And for 30 days, he lived it. And what's funny is I think that he's had far greater compassion and empathy for my dad than he ever had prior. And so what I find interesting is he's changed a lot in how he's how he interacts with my dad and how he just how he relates to it, And so I think it was good. I mean, our joke has been, for Joel, it was a very expensive therapy session to play, dad. And I think that he did a good job. Joel's he's a gifted person. I don't know if he's going to be doing 3 or 4 films a year type thing, but I think we grew up making movies as kids, and grew up acting and doing plays and doing all that sort of stuff. And I think it's just continued to grow over the years. And this is by far his best acting job. As his younger brother, I was a little concerned at moments, like, can he pull this off? Yeah. And I think the true testament would be, I forgot that he was my brother a lot of times, and that means he did a good job.
How cool! You very very well done in matching your actors with your family for the most part. I mean, it was easy, obviously, with your brother and your dad. I mean, he looks so much like him. You see the whole family at the end. Yep. Rebecca, the girl you found for Rebecca, looks so much like Rebecca. I mean, I'm trying to up here on the screen.
You're right.
Yep. There's you right there.
That's right. That's right.
The hair's spot on. That's for sure. Right.
Yep.
What was the process like in selecting the cast?
Yeah, I mean, look, that I will say, as a producer on the film, people are always like, can you explain to me what the difference between a producer and a director is? Which is a great question to ask, because this, and in music, a producer is kind of the director of music. But in film, the director has, in some cases, more power, but the director kind of works for the producer in the film world. So it's this kind of weird, hilarious. Yeah, it's a funny thing. So, but the producers work really hard before you get on set. And then a producer kind of hands it off to a director to go execute. That's the best way that I've kind of figured it out. So we were all a part of picking all these people, and it's not an easy thing. I mean, you're literally, dude, it's the weirdest thing. Like, you've got people like flashing on your screen and you're like, no, maybe. No, hey, you feel weird about it, It's kind of like these are actual people, Yes. But anyway, we were very fortunate to have everybody warned us. They're like, "Hey, man, I would condense the kids. I wouldn't have 7 kids. Too hard." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Man, that's the story, right?"
Exactly.
Do that, and they're like, "Well, figure out a way for them all to be over 18." I'm like, how do you do that when you've casted like 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds? They're like, "Well, just make it easier for yourselves." I'm like, nah, we got to make it right. And so I will say it's difficult having kids, because if they're under 18, they can only work 4 hours a day. It's like 7 hours a day, but 3 of them's got to be schooling. And then there's only 4 hours of actual shooting time. And there's like another hour for like hair and makeup. It's this crazy mathematical equation every day that you got to figure out how to, get these kids in there. But as far as picking them, you'll be amazed, when you read scripts enough and you start to get acquainted with the characters, that you can start to see the ones that you think is going to work. And that Kira Lee was a tough one, because we needed a great singer, as well as someone who obviously was at a similar age as our sister. So she was a tricky one. My mom was the hardest one, because, if you were to picture this, we wanted her to be Australian. We wanted her to be a mother. And then my mom's playing like a 40-year-old character, all right? Or that character is a 40-year-old person. In Hollywood, who's one to sign? Like, what woman's one to sign up for that job? I want to be a little bit over the hill. I've got 6 kids. And like, you don't get those people. So what happens in Hollywood is they're either playing much younger, so you got 40-year-olds trying to play 25-year-olds,
right?
Or then at that point, as soon as they switch, they're now typecast as like the grandmother, the mother thing. So you got to play as young for as long as possible. So when you're trying to play someone who's in the middle, midlife, very difficult to find someone that want to sign up for that job. So we only found Daisy Betts 10 days before we started filming. She only agreed to do it 10 days before we started filming. And it was a wild thing. She was over here as an actor, kind of full-time actor for a lot of years. She got her American citizenship, and she'd gone to Hawaii on a trip. And one of her friends just randomly said, hey, you should renew your passport while you're here, because it's pretty hard if it expires. This is like 6 months prior. And so anyway, we found her. We were looking at like the top 100 Australian actresses. Like literally, if you were an Australian, you were an actress, we knew who you were. And a lot of them didn't want to do it for whatever reason, or, whatever the things might be, or we didn't feel comfortable with them. And then we came to her. She was on vacation, actually, did a Zoom interview, and she just showed up to this interview, and we're like, there she is. She's here. Yeah.
Oh, how cool. Carmen, Michael W. Smith, Amy Grant, DeGarmo and Key, all very instrumental in my young Christian music life. What impact do you and your brother hope to leave?
In just overall life, in arts, or do I
think I switched gears to CCM from the movie. So it just in the world of music, you have people like you, like me, who look back on their life and who was instrumental in them, who was this part of that soundtrack.
Yeah,
let's go that direction. What
Look, man, I think that legacy and these types of things are interesting, because if I finish this road of music and I'm just referenced as, man, they made some cool music, I think I lost. I think that I believe in the power of who Jesus is, and I think he uses art. I think he uses people's lives to be examples. And my hope is that someone sees maybe in me and my brother, the people that said, hey, man, they actually weren't the most gifted people in the world. They just actually tried to follow their calling and what they felt like God was asking them to do. I think if someone could say to me and put on my gravestone that Luke is one of the most joyful people in the world, that was one of the most joyful, I would be absolutely delighted, because joy is not easy to come by in this world. You have to take care of your soul at that point. But joy is something that is instinctually Jesus. If you look at the most joyful people in the world, and you're in a grocery store or whatever, and you just see someone that you just like, man, this guy, whatever, or girl, you go talk to them, and usually they're like, man, well, I walk with Jesus. And so my hope is that people really just see someone that tried his best in his own flawed and maybe misguided ways at times, that was trying to do his best to display the love, the kindness, and creativity of who Jesus is.
Oh, that's so great. And all of that encompassed, I think, in this movie as well. So Unsung Hero is out this Friday. Luke, it's been an honor to talk to you. It's been really fun to spend this time together today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for the time, a delight, and hopefully our paths can cross sometime soon, man.